You hungry? Looking for a tempting treat? Hold on till I absorb some heat. Some added tang might please you too. I'll slide into an oven-fresh bun, and I'm ready for your eating fun.
Why don't you try a juicy good hot dog? Mmm, delicious.
Hello and welcome to Cleveland Classic Cinema. Tonight's movie is 1956's The Violent Years, directed by William Morgan and written by the one and only Edward D. Wood, Jr.
Why would one pay just to have schools wrecked? That's none of your business or mine. I have the connection. And besides, there'll be a great thrill behind this move. And don't worry if a few flags get destroyed in the process. Let's just say it's part of a well-organized foreign plan.
Yes, do you want Mama giving you a birthday gift?
Hmm?
Hey, pull up, you two. How old are you, punk?
Over 21.
Well, that's old enough.
It ain't supposed to be this way.
Keep away from that phone. I killed a policeman tonight.
A cop?
Yeah, a cop.
This is a story of violence.
The Violent Years is a juvie movie with a twist. The gang in this movie is all female. There are only 4 of them, and one of them looks almost exactly like my friend Brenda, but they managed to terrorize Los Angeles quite efficiently, robbing gas stations, raping innocent young men, and, well, who cares what else they do? This movie isn't as well known as other Ed Wood films since he didn't direct it. As I mentioned before, he only wrote it, but even with William Morgan's barely competent direction, it's still an Ed Wood movie. It's filled with the usual wooden dialogue, which shines like brass-plated lead throughout the film. It's okay for them to rob gas stations, rape innocent young dorks, and shoot cops, but by God, when they threaten to throw the flag on the floor, that's going too far. The movie is full of great dialogue, from the line, "Yeah, welcome like a mud butler," to the bitter, spat-out, "so what" line of Paula Perkins, but I'm going to hold off there. I wouldn't want to spoil anything for you. The main problem here is that Paula Perkins, the leader of the gang, comes from a wealthy family that doesn't pay enough attention to her. They neglect her horribly, buying the ungrateful little slut a new car on her birthday every year, giving her blank checks whenever she goes out, and doing all sorts of other hateful things like that. Instead of saying something to her folks, she registers her displeasure by taking Mom's Cadillac out when she robs gas stations. You'd think that whatever service station attendant was robbed by a bunch of girls in man-drag driving a Cadillac would at least remember the make and color of the getaway car, but that's not the case. Paula finds out what the police are up to by grilling her clueless newspaper editor father about the progress being made on their crimes and acts accordingly, checking in with her fence, a top-heavy woman by the name of Sheila, played by Lee Constant, who, after buying some of the jewelry they stole, puts them onto another job destroying a school classroom, telling them, "And don't worry if a few flags get damaged. It's all part of a well-organized foreign plan." This lends the movie an international flavor by intimating that the commies are planning to undermine the moral fabric of America by seeing to it that a number of flags are torn. Not to worry, however. The cops arrive just as Paul is about to desecrate Old Glory. This was the most successful film Ed Wood was ever associated with, mostly because of the exploitative elements in it. The trailer makes you think you're going to see a lot more than what actually happens on screen, particularly during the rape scene, but it was titillating enough to get men into theaters to see this tripe. Gene Moorhead, and I don't even want to imagine what it was like going through life with that name, appeared in 9 movies and 2 TV shows, in addition to being a Playboy Playmate of the Month in October 1955. She played Woman in Bathtub in 1957's The Amazing Colossal Man, and had a featured role in 1958's Attack of the Puppet People. The Violent Years was her first credited role. That's about it. I Stand for Jolly, who appears in this film as Judge Clara, appeared in an amazing 279 movies, starting with an uncredited role in 1935's Front Page Woman. Most of his appearances were in uncredited roles, and his last theatrical film was the 1972 classic Night of the Lepus, which is about giant man-eating bunny rabbits. If you ever get a chance to see that movie, don't pass it up. Believe me, you haven't lived until you've seen a giant rabbit attack. The rest of the cast in this film, with the exception of Barbara Weeks and Timothy Farrell, never appeared in another movie. Watching The Violent Years, it's easy enough to figure out why. There's no denying that bad girls have a lot of appeal. Even though just about every single guy you ask will swear that they like their women to be demure and gentle, there's just something about a beautiful, sexy, dangerous woman that gets guys by the boo-boo. It goes back quite a way. I mean, you got Salome in the Bible dancing for that dumbass Herod and getting the head of John the Baptist in return, and you go from there. You know, Lady Macbeth, Ezra Bathory, the list goes on. And I'm not talking about women of ordinary evil, you know, women who kill their kids to be with a man, or cows like Eileen Wuornos, but the fantasy evil women like Elkie Summer in Deadlier Than the Male, which sucked, by the way, and Andrea Parker, who played Miss Parker in The Pretender, or the ultimate evil woman with a capital E, Tura Satana, the star of Russ Meyer's Faster Pussycat Kill Kill, and Ted V. Michaels' The Astro Zombies and The Doll Squad. Tura Satana was born on July 10, 1935 in Hokkaido, Japan. She is an amazing-looking woman, her exotic beauty coming from her half-Japanese, half-Apache ancestry. After her family was released from the Manzanar relocation camp they were sent to at the outset of World War II, they moved to Chicago. Tura spent most of her early childhood fighting to get to and from school, as the other girls in the neighborhood didn't like Orientals. She finally got tired of getting her clothes ripped and getting spanked for it at home, and told them in no uncertain terms that if they bothered them again, she'd rip them a new one. They took her up on it, and she ended up beating all 5 of them. Put on detention, she protested that she was only defending herself and the other girls didn't get detention, so why did she get it? She was told they didn't lose the war. Even though she was angry at this, she took her punishment and still stayed on the top of all of her classes. Things really changed for her when she turned 9 years old. In her words, "One day I was flat-chested. 2 days later I was in a 34C bra and I haven't stopped growing since." When she was 10, she was gang raped by 5 boys, and when they were brought to trial, one of the boys' fathers bribed the judge and they got off, while Tura was sent to a reform school for tempting the boys into assaulting her. At age 13, she was forced into an arranged marriage with a boy she'd been promised to at birth. They ended up divorced within the year, and after moving to California, she went to work as a car hop, then a cigarette girl. Her 4.5-octave range voice got her hired as a singer at the Trocadero Supper Club, and from that she moved into burlesque. She found that, contrary to popular belief, the people she worked with had a strict moral code, and they became like a second family to her. She dated Elvis, and after a while, Hollywood producers and directors began to take notice of her. But she was told by the Universal casting director that she was too sexy to cast in their movies. She eventually starred in several movies and had smaller roles and cameo appearances in others, as well as appearing on several TV shows, including The Man from U.N.C.L.E. She's still making independent films today. I had the great pleasure of enjoying an email friendship with Miss Satana while researching a screenplay I was writing, and I'm glad to say that she's just as nice and pleasant and friendly as she is beautiful. She was a tremendous help to me as she suggested motivations for the characters and gave me some invaluable insight as to how women think. Unfortunately, every time I interact with a woman, it seems that I've forgotten everything she told me, so I end up just as confused as I usually am. Yeah, well, life goes on. If you'd like to find out more about Tura Satana, she has a website at turasatana.com. It contains a much more detailed biography and info on how to get in touch with her. If you email her, tell her I said hello. The Violent Years is a late period example of the work of Ed Wood. After his directing career had effectively ended and he began eking out a living writing screenplays and crewing pictures. He also crewed and wrote the screenplay for Stephen J. Apostoloff's 1965 nudie film Orgy of the Dead, which also starred Wood regular Criswell as the Master of the Dead. The movie manages to recycle Criswell's opening lines from another Cleveland classic cinema offering, Night of the Ghouls. The movie involves a horror writer and his girlfriend taking a midnight drive to look for a cemetery to hang out in so he can find some inspiration for an upcoming book. The car crashes, which isn't surprising since the scenes keep switching from night to day during the drive, and the two of them end up in an indoor cemetery tied to trees by a mummy and a werewolf and forced to watch the Orgy of the Dead, which consists of a gaggle of low-rent strippers doing their acts. The standout, to me anyway, is the cross-eyed blonde in the bride's veil doing this kind of spinning thing. It's kind of like a dance, but not really. Anyway, the movie's laid out kind of like a burlesque show with the mummy and the werewolf exchanging the most god-awful jokes you've ever heard in your life. Actually, the mummy does all the talking while the werewolf just kind of stands there and howls after the punchline. So right now, sit back, relax,